AlexEala has just touched down in Chicago, Illinois, and she is there for one reason. She is about to put her name on a $30 million deal with Gatorade. Take a second and really let that number sit with you. $30 million. That is not a rumor, that is not speculation, that is a real number being placed on the table for a tennis player who so many people spent years trying to write off. And right now, as that news spreads across every corner of the internet, there is a very specific group of people who are not feeling too good about themselves. The doubters, the critics, the ones who sat in comment sections and said she would never make it, the ones who shook their heads and said she was just another prospect who would disappear before she ever reached the top. Those people are watching this news break in real time, and the feeling hitting them right now is not a pleasant one. Before we get deeper into everything happening around AlexEala right now, if you are new here and you love watching the rise of athletes who prove everyone wrong, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We cover the stories that matter, the moves that change careers, and the moments that silence every doubter in the room. You do not want to miss a single one of them. Now, let us get back to business. Gatorade is not the kind of company that writes checks worth $30 million without thinking very carefully about who is on the other end of that deal. They are one of the most recognizable sports brands on the entire planet, and they protect that reputation fiercely. When they decide to make someone the face of their brand, they have already done their homework. They have looked at the numbers, studied the athlete's journey, examined their fan base, analyzed their social media reach, reviewed their commercial history, and made a very calculated decision that this person is worth every single cent of what they are offering. Gatorade does not gamble. They invest. And the investment they are making in AlexEala tells you exactly what they think about where she is headed. The deal is reportedly going to run for 2 years, and during that time, Eala will serve as the face of Gatorade within the WTA. That is a massive platform. Women's tennis has some of the most passionate and loyal fans in all of sport, and having the right face attached to your brand within that world can move product in ways that traditional advertising simply cannot match. Gatorade looked at the entire landscape of women's professional tennis, looked at every option available to them, and they landed on AlexEala. That alone should tell you something powerful about the position she has built for herself. But here's the part of this story that a lot of people are glossing over, and it is honestly the most interesting business angle of the whole thing. When Gatorade signed AlexEala, they were not just signing a tennis player, they were buying a direct connection to a market that has been waiting for exactly this kind of moment. AlexEala is currently the only East Asian player competing at the very top level of women's professional tennis. She is the only one carrying that flag at that height. And for millions of fans across the Philippines and all of Southeast Asia, she is not just an athlete they admire. She is someone who represents them. She makes them feel seen on a global stage in a sport that has not always made that easy for them. Gatorade understands exactly what that means from a business perspective. The sports beverage market is currently sitting at a valuation of around $1.17 billion, and projections show it is on course to grow by more than $2 billion additional dollars by the year 2034. That is enormous growth waiting to happen. The brands that position themselves correctly right now and align themselves with the right faces in the right markets are going to capture a massive share of that expansion. Gatorade just moved themselves to the front of the line in Southeast Asia by locking in AlexEala, and that is a decision that is going to look smarter and smarter with every passing year.
What makes this even more remarkable is that the official announcement has not even been made yet. The public reveal is reportedly being planned for next month at the BNP Paribas Open. Think about what that moment is going to look like. The cameras, the crowd, the energy in that building, and then the news dropping that AlexEala is now the face of Gatorade. The reaction from fans is going to be absolutely electric, and the reaction from everyone who spent years doubting her is going to be something else entirely. Every person who ever said she did not belong at the top level of this sport is going to have a very uncomfortable day when that announcement lands. And honestly, they brought that on themselves. Here is what those doubters never figured out about AlexEala, though. She was never just playing to win matches. From very early on, she was building something much bigger than trophies and rankings. While critics were finding reasons to count her out and online commentators were picking apart her game, she was stacking deals, making smart decisions, and laying the foundation for a career that would outlast anyone's ability to criticize it. The Gatorade deal is the biggest headline of the moment, but it is just one piece of a much larger picture that she's been carefully putting together. Earlier this year, Eala made a business move that showed a completely different side of her intelligence. She signed a deal with AlexEala, which on its own would have been a solid endorsement agreement. But what she did differently from most athletes in her position is where the real story is. Instead of accepting a straightforward cash payment and moving on, she sat at the negotiating table and asked for something much more valuable in the long run. She negotiated a 2% equity stake in the company. 2% might not sound like a headline number on its own, but when you understand what AlexEala is worth, the picture changes very quickly. AlexEala is currently valued at $240 million, and that valuation has risen by nearly 50% compared to just the previous year. So when you do the math on a 2% equity stake in a company worth $240 million, you are talking about a position already worth millions of dollars on its own. And here's the part that makes it even smarter. As AlexEala continues to grow, and all signs suggest it will, the value of her stake grows automatically with it. She does not have to do anything additional. She does not have to renegotiate. She made the right call at the right table one time, and now her wealth compounds passively alongside a company that is on an upward trajectory. This is not the thinking of someone who is just looking to cash in on a few years of fame before disappearing. This is the thinking of someone who is building generational wealth with the same discipline and precision that she brings to her tennis game. Most athletes at her stage of career take the money on the table and say thank you. Eala looked at what was on the table and asked what else was possible. That is the difference between an athlete and a business person, and she is clearly both. And then there is the NutriFactor advertisement that took the internet completely by storm just 4 months ago. This was not a major blockbuster film. It was not a music release from a global pop star. It was an advertisement, a branded commercial, and it pulled in around 70 million views on YouTube. 70 million people chose to watch an advertisement featuring AlexEala, and that number should genuinely stop you in your tracks if you think about it for a moment. Most brands spend hundreds of millions of dollars across entire campaigns and still struggle to generate that kind of organic attention. Eala delivered it in a single piece of content simply by being herself, by connecting authentically with the people who follow her, and by bringing an energy to the screen that audiences responded to in an enormous way. When those numbers started rolling in, every brand manager, every marketing director, and every sponsorship executive paying attention immediately reached for their phone. Numbers like that are not something you can manufacture easily. You can't just throw money at the problem and produce 70 million genuine views on an advertisement. That kind of reach comes from a real connection between a person and their audience, and AlexEala clearly has that connection in abundance. Brands around the world took note, and the conversations that followed have been leading towards some of the biggest deals of her career. One of the most significant conversations reportedly happening right now involves Nike. And if the numbers being discussed are even close to accurate, this would be another landmark moment in a career that seems to be producing those on a regular basis. Nike has been watching everything happening around Eala very closely, and what they've seen has apparently convinced the organization that she is the future of tennis in the Asian market. But there is also another layer to Nike's motivation here, and it comes from a painful lesson they learned not too long ago. When Nike lost Coco Gauff to New Balance, it hurt, and not just in terms of public perception. It hurt in terms of real money and real market opportunity.
Gauff went on to become one of the most marketable athletes in her sport, and Nike had to watch all of that value go somewhere else. That's the kind of mistake that sticks with an organization. It changes how they approach the next opportunity. And with AlexEala emerging as one of the most commercially valuable athletes in women's tennis, Nike is not sitting back and waiting to see how things develop. They are reportedly moving aggressively to make sure they don't repeat the same error.
The fact that New Balance and Adidas are also reportedly pursuing Eala only adds more urgency to the situation. When multiple major brands are in the room trying to sign the same athlete, the one who hesitates tends to walk away empty-handed. Nike knows this better than anyone, and sources suggest they've been making very bold offers to secure her signature before a competitor gets there first. The figures being discussed are reported to be around $45 million over 3 years, with additional performance bonuses and incentives on top of that, which could push the total value of the deal even higher, depending on how her career continues to develop. But beyond the money, what is being discussed for Eala's role within the Nike brand family would be something far more significant than a standard endorsement. Most athletes sign with Nike, appear in a few campaigns, and that is essentially the relationship. What is reportedly being discussed for Eala would give her a much deeper position within the brand. The details are still developing, but the direction of the conversation suggests that Nike sees her not just as a face to put on product, but as a genuine long-term partner in building their presence across a market they have been trying to fully capture for years. When you step back and look at everything happening around AlexEala right now, the $30 million Gatorade deal, the equity stake in NutriAsia, the 70 million view advertisement, the reported Nike conversations, it paints a picture of someone who has been very deliberately constructing an empire while the rest of the world was still debating whether she belonged at the top level of her sport. Every deal she has made, every negotiation she has entered, every partnership she has built has been a brick in a foundation that is now clearly visible for anyone paying attention. This is what happens when talent meets discipline, meets intelligence, meets an absolute refusal to let other people define what you are capable of. There were years where the noise around Eala was not always positive. There were people in and around the sport who questioned whether she had what it took to compete at the highest level consistently. There were moments where it would have been understandable to listen to that noise and let it get inside your head, but she did not. She kept working. She kept developing her game. She kept making smart decisions off the court. She kept building relationships and partnerships and a fan base that now spans multiple continents. And now all of that work is producing results that even her most optimistic supporters could not have mapped out exactly. The $30 million Gatorade deal is real. The landing in Chicago is real. The empire being built brick by brick around AlexEala is very, very real. And every person who ever looked at her journey and decided she was not worth believing in is now watching from a distance as the full picture comes into focus. The most important thing to understand about this moment, though, is that it is not a conclusion. It is not the end of the story or even close to it. It is the beginning of a phase that is going to make everything that came before it look like the warm-up. The biggest deals, the biggest moments, and the biggest chapters of AlexEala's career are still ahead of her. And the people who have been watching and believing from the start are about to have a very good time watching what comes next.